Arizona won big, but it wasn't always pretty. Let's discuss it all next. This is Postcast.
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into Postcast. Arizona won huge. No surprise there, dismantling Norfolk State, winning 98-61, but it wasn't always pretty. And let's talk about what made it kind of an ugly slog, but also why it speaks to what Arizona does well and will continue to do well. So that starts with the first half, of course. Arizona did not play particularly well, didn't look particularly sharp. They struggled shooting the ball and lived at the line. That's good and bad. They had 30 points in the paint in the first half, 17-26 from the free throw line, and they were not shooting well from three. You'd argue they should have a larger lead, dominating the glass, dominating the interior, and it was 0-4 from the free throw line from Norfolk State, so they were really shooting difficult shots, not living at the line. So Arizona did a lot of things well defensively at times, but it was good shooting from Norfolk State to keep it close, poor shooting from Arizona to keep it close, if you look at it that way. But Arizona was going to be inevitable in this game because they were living from the interior. If you look at the points in the paint, they had 58 in the game, and it could have been a lot more. I didn't think Jaden Bradley asserted himself. I didn't think Koa Pete really asserted himself. I do want to commend Mo Krivas for a fantastic game. But Arizona, to the point I was making at the outset, is if you look at the takeaways from this game, you expect to win by a similar score. Winning by 37 is not a surprise. That's not a surprise whatsoever. The surprise is that it took a while to create the distance and win by 37. It was a even game in the mid-20s. So I would say Arizona somehow didn't impress, but absolutely dominated the scoreline. And you get tired of the monotony of, okay, we're going to score on the interior. Arizona was dominant in paint points and free throws. And that's something they've dominated against UConn, the likes of whom many people still think are Final Four teams. And I would be included in that. Dominant against Florida. Florida's had some issues, but one thing they're not going to have issues at is rebounding. And Arizona won the rebounding against them, UCLA and UConn, and by 20 against UConn. So scoring in the paint is going to be the lifeblood for Arizona. Scoring twos is going to be the lifeblood. Arizona only made 2 threes in this game, and they shot 11 of them. And we're going to have the naysayers say, okay, you got to make threes against the inferior opponents. Arizona largely has. In previous games, you saw Burries, Aristo, and Karchenkov knock down a ton of threes and against bad opponents. That was against Denver. But what is going to win games for Arizona all season is their interior dominance and their ability to create shots on the interior. And not only this time was it scoring 2-pointers, it was scoring free throws. Arizona shot so many free throws in this game. They were 32 of 46. So you can clean it up there, but you scored 32 points from the line. It could have easily been higher had they shot better from the field. Had they shot better from the free throw line. So let's go through some of the takeaways. So that was my first takeaways. Arizona didn't impress me, but absolutely dominated the scoreline. And not all teams have that, let's get away from the team and we're going to win by 37. Some teams in these games where they struggle, win by 15. It's like, whatever, it's water under the bridge, we survive. My second one would be that Arizona dominated the paint. We touched on that. My third one that is a big takeaway is Arizona needed 2 guys to step up the most this season, I thought. And those 2 were Mo Krivas and Braden Burries. In the last couple of games, I've been harping on the same thing. Burries needs to play well, needs to be aggressive, needs to assert himself. And I want Mo Krivas to be a double-double guy because I think he can. He tied his career high with 20 points, and he could have easily had more points and more rebounds had he played longer and the game had been closer. Mo Krivas was the best player on the court today. That is a takeaway and an important one at that, because not all the time has Mo Krivas asserted himself. Sometimes we said against Embry-Riddle, who Arizona could have scored 200 against should they have cared to do so, that he looked soft and people were stripping the ball out of his hands. Well, Mo Krivas looked rugged, physical from the get-go, blocking shots. I've been praising him nonstop for his defensive efforts, his ability to influence the shot chart, alter the shot diet of the other team, and alter actual shots taken. But offensively, I've implored him to do more. And this is a game where Mo Krivas was the biggest offensive and defensive weapon on the floor. And you look at what he did in this game, and I honestly would argue he had a bigger impact than his 20 points and 9 rebounds. He went 7 of 8 from the field, 6 of 9 from the free throw line, had 9 boards, and he was able to influence the other team's shots and say, you know what, in the points in the paint department, you're not going to get any of those. 24 points in the paint is not a whole lot in a full basketball game. And many of those were when Krivas was out of the game. Then you look at what Braden Burries did. His efficiency was solid today. 4 of 8, 50% from the field, 6 of 6 from the free throw line. And I think just seeing the ball go through, kind of playing that composed, poised game, clever footwork, playing off 2 feet, he looked good. 15 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists. I liked what I saw from Braden Burries. And that would be my third takeaway. I'll give you one more takeaway that I think is important. I think that Arizona struggling to shoot in a game where they went 2 of 11 from 3 and honestly weren't super efficient early in this game. If you look at the first half from the field, they're 15 of 23 from 2 and 0 of 5 from 3. That's 15 of 28. That's barely over 50% against a far smaller team, but still were able to score 98 points. Speaks highly to the Arizona's reproducibility of their offense. Not every team can have a game where they look off. They visibly look off at the beginning, and their best players aren't necessarily going as hard as they can and trying to score. Like Jaden Bradley in all of these non-conference games that have not been the premier programs, he's looked like a decoy, someone there to run the ship if necessary, but hasn't been asserting himself. Koa Pete, I'd say, in most of those games has been the same. This one, I think he was a little assertive, just kind of got frustrated. And when your teams don't look the part and your best couple players aren't playing as hard and as important of a role, as essential of a role, many teams cannot distance themselves the way they did after. And I think that's important to note because Arizona's offense is going to be top 10. They scored 98 in a game where they didn't shoot threes. They scored 93 in a game against Florida where they only made 2 threes and only shot 5. Arizona, everyone's going to implore them to make more threes. But there's a phrase called, you live by the 3, you die by the 3. And Arizona's not going to die by the 3. They may not make enough 2s and free throws to win a game once in a while. But more often than not, their reproducibility and repeated excellent offensively is going to be the recipe to win. Not to mention the defense looks the part. The defense looks the part. And Norfolk State, credit to them. They made a lot of difficult shots early in this game and kept it close. I was impressed by their resolve. And Arizona, just too big, too fast. And I talk about this a lot in the preseason. Basketball is becoming about possessions. And the way to maximize possessions is get rebounds and get forced turnovers. Arizona is using their size to be disruptive defensively and make teams have difficult shots. And they're also going to crash the glass and rebound. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the keys to the game. And also, of course, the Ivan Karchenkov injury. All that and more coming up on Locked On Wildcats postcast. The holidays always feel a little easier when you already know the perfect gift, and Omaha Steaks makes it almost too simple. Whether you're treating yourself this season or sending something memorable to family and friends, Omaha Steaks delivers handcrafted perfection right to the door. And this week is the best time to jump in because their cyber sale is here and the deals are huge. The quality is exactly what you hope for. Incredibly tender steaks, rich flavor, and meals that make hosting or weeknight cooking easier. And the variety is underrated. Of course, the steaks are excellent, but the burgers, the comfort meals, the sides, the desserts, it's one of those gifts that truly fits anyone and their dietary preferences. Save huge on unforgettable gifts with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide and an extra 20% off select favorites during their cyber sale. And for an additional $35 off, use promo code COLLEGE at checkout. That's omahasteaks.com and promo code COLLEGE. Terms apply. See site for details. Thank you for making Locked On Wildcats your first listen of the day. Thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. I sincerely appreciate it. I know everyone else does as well. Arizona 98, Norfolk State 61. You kind of expect that type of scoreline for the #2 team in the country. Wasn't always pretty, but let's go through some statistics and then go through my keys. The statistics I often harp on are points in the paint. Arizona scored 58 of those, 58 of their 98, and they also scored 32 free throws. So that is a sizable number right there. And for those of you who do not like math, that's 90. 58 plus 32 is 90 points created from the paint or free throws. Very, very impressive. Hard to beat that. Then you look at the other numbers I tend to harp on. Points off of turnovers, Arizona scored 19 off of 14 Norfolk State turnovers. Arizona had 44 rebounds as opposed to 17 from Norfolk State, 27 from Norfolk State, meaning there was a 17 rebound advantage for Arizona. And then you look at second chance points. Arizona wasn't super prolific with 12 offensive rebounds converting to 13 second chance points. And Arizona did have 23 fast break points. So they started picking that up. The first half was not particularly impressive in those numbers. They did not force a lot of turnovers. And in terms of fast break points, there was 9. And I felt like those were all generated at the very end. After it was 26-26, Arizona switched in and became more disruptive defensively. So now let's look at some keys to the game that I listed. I said I wanted Arizona to be plus 35 in points in the paint, plus free throws made. Well, considering they scored 90 of them, they should be more than plus 35, and they are. So points in the paint for Norfolk State was not the strongest suit for them. And it never was going to be against a very big Arizona team. So points in the paint for Norfolk State was 24, which is a decent number, but not a ton. And free throws made, they only made 2 free throws, 2 of 9. So 26 compared to 90, Arizona dominates in that department. And if you dominate that department, you're going to win. Doesn't matter if you play Norfolk State or you play Connecticut. Arizona exceeded those numbers against both. They did it against Florida. They did it against UCLA. Maybe not by the same disparity as they did here, but they also were plus 20 against UConn on the glass. Arizona is going to win a lot of games by just being big and skilled in terms of how they enter the ball into that low post area, whether it's a Bradley drive, whether it's Pete athletically soaring to the rack, or if it's a high-low from Krivas inside for Krivas or a walk at a finish. Arizona is going to be very good there. Another key that I had was Burries, Aristote, and Karchenkov threes. I wanted to see 6 threes between them. Well, they only made 2 threes as a team, so that was not going to happen. The threes were made by Burries and Delorso. And Burries, I would say, checked the box. I thought he was very good today. I wanted to highlight he and Mo Krivas. And then Aristote, I thought, looked a little clunky at times. He was active, but he just didn't – the ball seems to squirt away from him when he dribbles. He's a catch-and-shoot guy with athletic potential. Like, you want him to be a role player who thrives in his role. I thought he tried to do a little too much at different times today. And Ivan Karchenkov, I mentioned we talked about his injury, looked like he sprained his ankle. You hope – you never know the severity of those things. You hope for the best because he's an incredibly valuable player in terms of he can defend multiple positions, he can rebound, he can knock down open shots, and he's a good slasher. So you hope for the best for him. Arizona does have a big week coming up with Alabama and Auburn, and you want Karchenkov to be healthy, but it will test and accelerate the usage for a guy like Aristote. And you'll see how capable Delorso is in a larger role. So that is interesting. And he did not have a big impact on this one, but his impact on the season is huge. So you hope for the best there. And the other key I had was get transition buckets, force turnovers. They did that in the second half, not particularly much in the first half. I was not super impressed with the ball pressure of Arizona. They did try a press, and it seemed to work early, but they were being sloppy on the interior, not scoring, going to the free throw line. And it was great shot-making defense from the Norfolk State Spartans that made Arizona's defense less impactful. The other key I had written down was I want to see if Krivas can get a double-double. He had 20 and 9, so I'm basically going to count that as a success. Mo Krivas was the best player in the court today, and he could have achieved getting 1 extra rebound. But the 20 points matching his career high in 26 minutes, I thought he was great. And like I said in the preview for awards that I said, I think he deserves a job into the all-conference nominees. It depends how many teams there are. It depends what the numbers are. But I'll basically say this. I think Mo Krivas, in terms of impact, is a top 15, top 20 player in the Big 12. I don't know if he'll be on that, but I think he's proving that theory correct. Answering a couple questions, yeah, he did hobble off pretty poorly. Ankle sprains are tricky, though. I've had a bunch myself. You never know. Sometimes you can hobble off, and then all of a sudden you're walking soon. Sometimes you can walk and continue playing, and the next day you can't walk at all. I'm hopeful he's out, not very long. Obviously, not hitting threes is not ideal to address that. But if you're able to score that repeatedly on the inside, you have at least a way to win when you're not hitting threes, whereas a lot of teams shoot tons of threes, and if they don't make it, they have no answers. So I'd actually rather be on Arizona's side of the equation. Obviously, you'd like to be in a perfect world, making both threes and twos. Well, coming up next, we'll address a couple more things. I wanted to get you those keys, and I'm going to give you a few takeaways that I think are important for what's coming up next for Arizona and that is playing a few teams from the state of Alabama, Alabama and Auburn, both of whom are streaky teams that are performing pretty well, but I don't think are as good as their namesake or rankings. And we'll discuss that a little bit later, and also address a few more questions, should you guys have any, about Arizona's dominant win over Norfolk State. All that and more ahead on Locked On Wildcats. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into the same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you guys for watching that. And certainly, I encourage you to try hopping on FanDuel and win some money on your Wildcats. Thank you guys for making Locked On the number one podcast network around. And thank you for making Locked On Wildcats your first listen. Thank you for tuning in to Postcast. Arizona's going to win. And you're going to have wins like this, where you're going to win and the score is going to reflect its dominant. You're going to see a game and say, oh, they won by 37. They cover the spread, whatever it may be. But Arizona, I don't think, look particularly good, and I think they're kind of towing a fine border of some of these non-conference games of looking a little different in their recipe. The recipe that I said is repeatable is scoring twos. That they have not deviated from. But what they have deviated from is the aggression of Jaden Bradley. And I agree in some cases trying to get Braden Burries more of the playmaking, more of the responsibility to generate offense. I agree with trying to get Mo Krivas extra repetitions as a true scoring presence, because I think he holds the keys for just how good Arizona can be. But I do think it's interesting to see the way the team plays one way versus another when they play against UConn. It's Jaden Bradley and Koa Pete. Against UCLA, Koa Pete really struggled. It was Jaden Bradley, and he wasn't very good in the first half, and they stayed alive courtesy of Awaka and Del Orso. I'm very interested to see, once Big 12 play happens and you more routinely play teams that have the ability to stay with you athletically, what is the recipe for keeping the Braden Burries, the Ivan Karchenkovs, the Dwayne Aristos, the Del Orsos hungry and happy in terms of their shot diet while still influencing the game with heavy dosage of Jaden Bradley and Koa Pete? Because I think at this point, the experimentation needs to come to an end by mid-December. I think Awaka is a constant. He's going to rebound. He's going to be okay getting any ball on the interior and hopefully finishes over length. That's his one deficit. At times, he struggles doing so. Krivas, it's about confidence, and I think he's starting to build that. Burries, you need to hit those open threes, and I think him taking those sidestep threes is going to bug Tommy a little bit. I'd like him to shoot more of the first catch ones. But you know how good those All-American potential guys are, and at a certain point, I want to see those guys step up and say, okay, it doesn't matter who we're playing. We're going to assert ourselves for 10 minutes of this game, and then this game's over. I want to see Koa Pete and Jaden Bradley do so in the next couple games. And that gets me to the next couple games. You go to Auburn. You go to McHale. Auburn comes to McHale, and you go to the state of Alabama. You're not playing Tuscaloosa. You're playing in Birmingham against the Alabama Crimson Tide. Arizona, after this game, they're now 7-0. And you are 9th offensively, 11th defensively. That's elite. Very few teams can stay up with that. The teams that have jumped Arizona typically played in these big players area tournaments, and their ratings accelerated by playing inferior opponents, or in the case of Michigan, by blasting everyone in their path. So when you play Auburn, Auburn beat a St. John's team, but they also got manhandled by another team in there. Like you look at Michigan and they got blasted, but is Michigan that good? Or does Auburn have some warts that Arizona can expose just because they have a similar build to Michigan? Michigan's enormous. They employ 3 big guys, and Arizona has a lot of size as well. Is that a path for them to explore against Auburn? Absolutely. And I am pretty confident Arizona's going to beat Auburn, who's 6-2. They're 11th offensively, 73rd defensively. and they're not a very good rebounding team. So I like Arizona's chances there. But they do have athletes. They have good guards, and they made the Final Four last year. They have holdovers from that team. And then you look at Alabama. Alabama is 5-2. They're third on offense, 38th on defense. And this is a team that is going to live and die by the three. And this is where it's going to be super interesting because this team will shoot a ton of threes. They're going to play lightning fast. Arizona shouldn't be that impacted by the speed of the game, but Arizona is going to be scoring twos. And there's going to come a point in that game where you guys are saying, oh my gosh, we can't stay up with them because they're hitting threes and we're hitting twos. And that's just not a good math equation. But if you're going to shoot 60% from two against a small Alabama team and Alabama goes cold, that's what their fans are going to be moan. So I'm very interested to see what happens there. And that's why I think this is a good time to kind of simmer down the experimentation. I want to see more of what is repeatable and what is expected for the rest of the season entering Big 12 play, because this is a really good team with a championship chance. We talked about the best teams in Tommy Lloyd's era. I think this is the best team in Tommy Lloyd's era. I think it's the best team since 2014, and maybe even better, because what it takes is making it to a Final Four. And I would say that team was very, very good. And it's hard to be better than that team, the 2014 team. But Arizona has a chance. But their recipe is get a lot of easy shots, make a lot of easy twos, and you don't need to deviate too much. I don't want to see too many experimentations in the final games of non-conference heading to the Big 12 play. I think you know your identity now, and you just hope that the making threes happens, but don't necessarily force, like a lot of you say, we need to shoot more threes. Not hitting threes could bite you in a game. I don't think it'll bite you on a season because of how well Arizona makes twos. The only games that's going to be a talking point is when Arizona doesn't score as many twos. It's not that they're not taking threes, because the shots from two are great shots. It's you're making them from the twos are not like long contested mid-range twos. They're right at the face of the rim, and no one's big enough to stop Arizona from getting there. Not Florida, not UConn, not UCLA. And so far, it's been so good for Arizona. I think the only games that people are going to bemoan we need to make more threes are going to be the games in which Arizona struggles making free throws or missing bunnies against a big team equaling size. But Arizona is yet to be out-rebounded, and they've been able to do so against big teams. I like Arizona's team a lot. I think they're the favorites in the Big 12. I was unimpressed by Houston, unimpressed by Texas Tech. BYU's got some working to do. Iowa State's really good to start, but they were a team I expected to be better to start and have less growing pains because they feature three veterans who've played for them for a long time. I think Arizona is the favorite in the Big 12. What say you guys? Thank you guys for tuning into Postcast. Really appreciate it. Always tune into Locked On Wildcats. And I'd love to talk to you guys. Let me know if you guys have any shots. Shoot me some ideas on Twitter and tell me you want to hear about this. And also, huge win by Arizona over Arizona State, the Territorial Cup, and Arizona's 9-3 after going 1-3 to start Big 12 play. This team is the hottest team in the Big 12 football-wise and the best team in the Big 12 basketball-wise. Life is good. Bear down. Thank you guys for tuning in. We will be back on Monday with a lot of sports to talk about from this weekend and previewing some big games, both in the football and on the basketball court. Thank you guys, and hope you guys had a wonderful Thanksgiving.